and welcome to Best Laid Plans. This is your host, Sarah Hart-Unger, and this is a podcast where we talk all things planning and planning adjacent. Today, I have a little bit of a mixed bag episode for you because it's going to be half follow-up on last week's topic, which was kind of a hot topic in terms of the response I got back. And then the other half, I'm going to get a little personal and talk about my current feelings on AI, which I feel a little bit nervous to even discuss this because I feel like it is such a delicate topic, but I'm going to do my best. Just share where I am right now with the current AI landscape. All right, but we're going to begin with a follow-up because last week we talked a little bit about, I talked about whether or not planning saves money. And this was spurred on by a comment that I was sent by a listener who was wondering what I thought about the relationship between planning and saving money. And I went on to say, I think planning can be used to save your money, but I would not rely on planning to automatically save you money because in my experience, it can save money in some instances in terms of buying things ahead of time, but I also tend to think of fun things that I want to do in the future as I'm planning, and those things can be costly. So for me, it was hard to say one way or another whether planning would definitively save a person money, but I thought it might be helpful to share some examples I got from listeners because I got a few and people felt pretty passionate. So the first one comes from a listener named Bridget who says, "You asked on today's show about how planning saves people money, and for me, the number one way it does is preventing unplanned takeout and restaurant spending." She says, "I eat out when it's a deliberate choice, usually a social occasion or one-on-one time with one of my kids, or a rare treat-yourself meal on my own when my batteries are low and I need a pick-me-up, but I eat the vast majority of my meals cooked at home, which requires planning and routines." She says, "I have a shopping list system in Google Keep, and when I cook, I make big batches of things like soups, chili, stews, curries to freeze individual portions. I also keep fruit, nuts, and salad greens in the house and make homemade vinaigrette before the last batch runs out. I keep a Ziploc freezer bag of grilled chicken breast slices. I cut and freeze them spread out on a freezer paper-lined baking sheet and then put in a bag so I can quickly add protein to any salad. I usually have individual salmon grilled fillets and grilled skirt steak in the freezer too. That means I always have at least 2 to 3 meal choices, usually more I can have without a lot of time-consuming prep. With low-friction, healthy, and tasty options, I almost never resort to impulse ordering takeout. With inflation making fast food cost what restaurants used to cost and regular restaurants cost what high-end one used to cost, this is a huge savings." She says food is usually between 1 and 3 of the following: healthy, cheap, delicious, convenient, and sometimes she says, I nail all 4. I love that perspective, Bridget. I think that is so important to point out. And I think the health piece of this actually is also very important because being able to eat healthfully and not spend a lot of money on that food can potentially save you money in medical costs later on as well. Of course, please do not take this statement for me to mean that every medical issue is preventable by food. That is absolutely not the case. However, eating in a healthful manner might reduce certain risks and, again, save some money on healthcare costs down the line. So thank you so much for that great example. The next one comes from a listener named Elizabeth who writes, "I think planning also gives me the information necessary to save money. For instance," and by the way, this is my friend Elizabeth who writes a blog at Optimistic Musings of a Pessimist, and she has been on a months-long trip to Europe with her family. They're Canadian and they did this big adventure. She's extremely frugal and she's an extremely good planner. So if you want to see an example of this in action, check out her website, which I'll link to in the show notes. But she writes, "I was planning to head to a second sauna in Finland this week. The first one I went to, towels were included in the entry price, as in you register at the front desk and they give you a towel. But the new place I wanted to try was quite a bit cheaper, but only on my 3rd time on their website did I realize you either had to bring your own towel or rent one for about $13 Canadian. $13 for a towel rental. I feel like you could buy a towel for $13. So that is fascinating. I do think paying attention to those sorts of little details, which I would include in planning, can absolutely save you money or time. I think I've talked on this podcast before about how I went to get my kids' passports renewed a few years ago. And the woman at the post office was like, yeah, almost nobody ever gets this on their first time, which is kind of funny, right? Like there's a very specific list of things you need to do and you need to bring, and you need to either have both parents there or have a special signed notarized proxy form, and you have to have photos and XYZ. And it's all doable, but unless you're very careful about reading that, you're probably going to end up making multiple trips to the post office and possibly having to pay for expedited processing of the passport that you wouldn't need if you went at the regular time. Now, don't at me. It's true. Sometimes it's just worth doing that expedited no matter what, because it's not a huge difference in cost and is going to come a lot sooner. So yes, I do know that caveat to what I said, but still, that is kind of an example to what Elizabeth said, which is like really carefully looking at the different options, which I would consider part of planning, can save you a lot of hassle in the long run. And then finally, I have a great comment with some specifics sent by a listener named Anne. And she says, I actually think you sold planning short in your answer about whether it saves you money if you care about experiences. While I completely agree with you that if you want to have experiences, they usually involve spending some money, the alternative is sitting at home and doing nothing. So then an apples to apples comparison would be A, doing the experience having planned for it in advance, or B, not planning for the experience and then figuring out a way to do it anyway, which may sometimes often cost more. A very concrete example from my own life, and this refers to Anne, she says, I attend several concerts each year at San Francisco Symphony and tend to buy most if not all of my tickets early on when they have the compose your own subscriptions. This way, I only go and see what I want to see, get the tickets at the original price sold by the venue, and perhaps even receive a small discount for buying several at once. A very good front row and center balcony ticket can be as low as $60 and as high as $120 for some very special guest artists, and fancy tickets can cost $200. She says she's never not been able to get tickets to whatever she wanted. But a friend was telling her that she couldn't get tickets to a specific concert she wanted to see for less than $600, which seemed totally crazy. After they kept discussing, she checked online and it was true. The concert was sold out and the only way to get those tickets was through StubHub with an enormous markup. She says, when I mentioned to her that I was currently buying tickets for the next season for a fraction of what she was quoting, she was in. So this is very interesting, and it does kind of pertain to concerts and this market where there is this very extreme markup going on where you get rewarded for buying things ahead of time. Sometimes it's not possible to get what you want. I mean, I've been in line for Taylor Swift tickets and just ended up with nothing. And I'll share a fun story that just, I don't know, illustrates how this can be a little bit tricky. But I still think this is a really great comment from Anne. And actually, I go back and look at this comment. She's saying her friend actually ended up not wanting to plan ahead because she was worried she would have to be committed. But at the same time, she feels like it is a big trade-off to have your plans in advance for hundreds or $1,000, costing more if you were to buy them later. So here's my fun story. I wanted to see Olivia Rodrigo when I found out that she was touring locally to me, actually, in Sunrise, Florida. So that venue is like 15 minutes from the house, super, super easy. My kids love Olivia Rodrigo, and we had actually seen her in concert before and had a wonderful time. So when I saw the tickets were going on sale and there was a pre-sale and I had the right credit card for the pre-sale, I was like, I'm doing this. And I set an alarm and I got in the queue at work, and it was a little bit of a hubbub. I was seeing patients and kind of running back and forth, but I was able to log on at the right time. And I'm on the phone with my friend who's also trying to do this. And we're having this weird conversation. Like, I'm like, look, I got tickets in section 124. And she's like, that's not a section. It's like behind the performer. And I'm like, no, I got it. And I was so proud of myself. And I got 4 tickets. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get 2 more because you can't get in. So I'm going to keep buying these tickets. And this is such a great deal. And I got 6 tickets to that concert. And then I realized that I had bought tickets for Hartford, Connecticut in September and not Sunrise, Florida in November like I was trying to get. So I guess this is just to say, if you've ever tried to kind of win in one of these ticket buying situations and then have failed, then I've been there too. However, there's a happy ending to this story, which is that if you are getting tickets that much in advance and you're getting in line and it's hard to get, those tickets are probably going to be fairly desirable. So I was able to immediately sell my tickets and I got a $50 profit. I probably could have gotten more, but I just wanted them out of my hands and had the whole thing over with. So fun story. I don't have Olivia tickets. I did earn $50. I had a lot of stress along the way and would have rather not earned the $50, but yeah, That was my attempt at planning my most recent concert desires in advance. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and we are really going to change topics here, but you can keep your comments about cost and planning coming because I think it is a very interesting area of discussion. And we're going to move on to another juicy topic, which is AI, but with a little bit of a historical background. All right, I will be back. Today's episode is brought to you in part by Prep Dish. Everyone is looking for simple solutions this time of year, and if you haven't tried Prep Dish yet, it is the perfect time to simplify dinner. Prep Dish entirely removes the mental load out of planning dinner and provides efficient and super balanced meals for every week. Here's how it works. Every week, you receive a full week's dinner plan in your email, complete with shopping list. There are now also Instacart links to make it even easier to shop if you like to shop that way, or of course, you can take their printable list to your favorite grocery store. Then all of the prep work is laid out for you, and each of the weeknight dinners come together so quickly. You do the cooking, but someone else has done the thinking in a very strategic way. I love that. To try out Prep Dish at no cost, go to prepdish.com/plans to activate your trial. In addition to the super fast menus that I love, they're ready in 30 minutes or less typically, Prep Dish also has gluten-free, paleo, and low-carb options, so there's truly something for everyone. Again, that's prepdish.com/plans for your first 2 weeks free. If you try it, let me know. I'd love to hear about it. Today's episode is brought to you with support from Green Chef. Green Chef is a delivery meal kit that can help support you in feeling your best during your busiest of seasons, and I know most of you are probably in one right now. With Green Chef, every week you get to choose from over 40 recipes made with organic produce, responsibly sourced protein, and nothing you can't pronounce. Their meals come pre-portioned and are ready in minutes. And if you want guidance beyond the plate, they now offer free unlimited one-on-one nutrition coaching that helps you stay on track. I love using Green Chef during my most hectic months, which we're in right now. It's also an amazing thing to consider trying when you're coming back from travel. Dinner is instantly figured out, and the fridge is stocked with healthy food. My kids always get excited when it's a Green Chef week because the meals are typically very delicious and interesting, so that's an added bonus. Head to greenchef.com/50bestlaid and use code 50bestlaid to get 50% off your first month, then 20% off for 2 months. That's code 50bestlaid at greenchef.com/50bestlaid. Today's episode is brought to you with support from IXL. It's that time of year again, the last push towards the end of the school year. I know my kids are super busy with so many spring activities, and there's the end of year standardized testing to look forward to as well. Whether you're a homeschooling parent or you want to provide some extra learning support for your child, IXL is a great tool, and this time of year is a wonderful time to try it out. My kids are using IXL and have been for years to learn and reinforce concepts, and I know it's made a positive impact on their learning. IXL can be used as enrichment, review, or part of a homeschool curriculum. Everything is organized by grade and subject, and you can quickly find what each child needs without juggling multiple resources. The interactive practice and clear explanations and feedback make it easy to reinforce learning as you prepare for end-of-year assessments or milestones. Make an impact on your child's learning, get IXL now. And Best Laid Plans listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/plans. Visit IXL.com/plans to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price. All right, I am back, and we are going to talk a little bit about AI right now, and from a little bit of a different perspective than my recent listener. We had guest Emily, oh my gosh, I always say her name wrong, Chario, I believe, and if that's wrong, I apologize, Emily. She was fantastic. I'm going to link to her episode. She is a true AI expert, and she is a vice president at an AI-based company, or a company that kind of specializes in AI applications. And I learned a lot from Emily during that episode. And if you'd like to learn more from her, again, I'm going to share that link with all of her info. But I'm going to come at this topic not from an AI expert, but from a very kind of like regular old person, but who has been very thoughtful and a little bit, I don't know, suspicious of technology in the past, and where I am in the whole AI arc right now. My disclaimer is I feel like this is a little bit of a hard episode to create because everything I might say does have the risk of sounding really silly later on, but we're just going to call this, these are my thoughts as of May 2026. But before we do that, I thought to myself, this feels familiar. I remember having so much angst when the iPhone was coming out. Not when we started to have like little flip phones. I got one of those without much angst, but when the iPhone was coming out, I had a blog back then, so I was able to go back and read some of my thoughts about my trepidations around getting an iPhone. And people were very excited about getting it. They felt very expensive and kind of extra at the time. It was not normal to be spending $1,000 on phones like people do kind of routinely today. And again, this technology was new, so we had to decide whether we wanted it in our lives or not. And I felt concerned. And I'm actually going to read you some of my words from these early posts so you can kind of hear what headspace I was in, because I feel like this is a little bit analogous to where we are with AI right now. Okay, here's a post from June 2010, straight out of my blog. Yesterday in clinic, one of the interns was trying to convince me to get one. And by one, I mean an iPhone. My Verizon contract is coming to an end this September, so I'll have the option of switching to AT&T if I want. This intern's main selling point was the apps. There's this one app, he said eagerly, that collects all of our confirmation numbers for any trip you're taking and puts them into one document. Hotels, flight numbers, anything else. I whipped out my beloved planner and demonstrated how my planner had the same feature and required no powering up nor battery life. He had me beat with the built-in maps and GPS, however, but I'm not sure those things alone are worth it, especially since I already have a GPS I use in my car, i.e. the best thing to ever happen to me. Then Apple is pushing video phone capabilities, except I don't want FaceTime on the phone. I want to be able to sort the laundry or scrub toilets while I talk, and I want to be able to do so completely naked if I so choose. Anyway, obviously I'm unconvinced. I think I might mull it over for a while and consider a BlackBerry-type device instead to allow for easy emailing. In this area, Verizon service is much better than AT&T anyway. Then again, I might get swept up eventually, and I have to admit the iPhone is pretty. All right, fast forward about a year to 2011, and I wrote, I realize I might be the only person out there not in love with her iPhone. So I guess I did succumb to the pressure. On the one hand, it's an aesthetically pleasing piece of very impressive technology. On the other, I still don't get how it's going to improve my life in any significant way. I don't really want to have an excuse to spend more time on Facebook or Twitter. I'm still going to be drawn to conventional lists that don't require an on switch to activate. I thought about downloading a running app, but I don't feel like carrying this relatively heavy and fragile object with me on runs. Plus, I have a distance measuring device that works well already, and I'm referring there to my Garmin GPS watch. I guess the one somewhat significant difference is I will now be connected to email at all times, including work email, now that I figured that challenge out. Not sure that's really something to celebrate. Maybe I should have bought a lovely handbag instead. 2013. I'm feeling a little bit scattered as I approach the keyboard during today's little slice of freedom. Our awesome babysitter is here for a 2-hour stint. By the way, those first 2 posts, I had no children, and by 2013, I was pregnant and had a toddler when this post was written. Today, I've been ruminating more about changing certain life-sucking habits, and in particular, my rather lame iPhone addiction. The saddest part, I knew this was going to happen back in 2011 when I first acquired the thing, and I didn't want it to. And yet, I hate that I stare at that screen before going to bed. I hate that I feel compelled to answer texts as soon as they come in. I hate that sometimes the thing somehow makes it to the dinner table. I hate that I'm distracted by it, even when watching TV. I hate that I pick it up while I'm in the playground with kids or while doing other things with them. It is great for catching photos and videos on the run, but it's too easy to go from camera to email to Facebook to God knows what. I even hate that I scroll around on worthless sites while breastfeeding. It makes sense since it really is hard to do much else during that time and it's a lot of time, but somehow feels unsavory. The thing is, the damn thing is useful. I use it to check the weather, get directions, pick a restaurant, plan date nights, order our diapers, and sometimes even blog. I like checking in occasionally to Facebook to see pictures of my friends' cute kids or live vicariously through my still single and carefree crowd. I like keeping up with my favorite blogs via Feedly. I love it to listen to podcasts in the car and even use it as a handy e-reader at times. And obviously I need it for work, especially when on call. But despite all this, I recognize that my attachment to this rather amazing technology has gotten out of hand. First, I don't want my one child and eventually my 2 children to model this behavior, and there is no way I can expect them to develop self-control in this arena if I am not capable of practicing it myself. Second, I feel that all of this activity is just taking a toll on actually living. Time is too precious to waste on scanning rather worthless content and responding mindlessly to the Pavlovian bleep of the inbox or text. Anyway, I really feel the need to unplug and break free, but I'm not sure how. I've tried to set limits for myself, but the price of that is just incredibly addictive. I'm sure there are studies on this, or if not, there will be soon. All right, well, that was 2010, 2011, and 2013, 13 years ago, me pregnant with a toddler and in a very kind of suspicious and negative headspace about my iPhone. And honestly, 2026 me is like, yep, exactly. You had it. So that makes me a little bit anxious, right? Because I feel the same way about a lot of AI. And while I would love to be wrong and be like, actually, this made life so much better and we're all so happy and safe and the world is a better place, I'm a little nervous because I don't know. I feel like I had reasonable fears that absolutely came to fruition more than 10 years ago. So where am I today with AI? I guess I'll start with, what do I use it for? Do I use it? I do. I have a ChatGPT account. I have a Claude account. I use Open Evidence fairly frequently at work, which is kind of like an AI-assisted medical search engine that you can have full-on conversations with. It works kind of scarily well. You do have to check the sources, but it does provide a list of articles, so you can actually go to primary research and make sure that if you're looking at something that's high stakes, that it's really, really true. So it's a great tool that I use at work. I use ChatGPT maybe 1 to 2 times a day. I use it for, well, I'll talk about what I use it for in a little bit, but I definitely do enjoy using it for certain things. And I've played with Claude, although for me, I mostly just use it as like a second opinion. Like if I don't like what ChatGPT told me, then I will go to Claude and see if there's a different answer or a differently worded answer. And that's about it. I don't use them as agents. I just use them as information organizers, information gatherers, to search and to get a well-organized response in return, and sometimes to maybe analyze a picture or something like that. Okay, so that's kind of where I am with AI. I guess I'll talk about what I don't want it to do, and then I'll talk about what I currently use it to do. And I don't know that I'm going to have any grand sweeping conclusions, but just kind of this is where we are. So I don't want AI managing my calendar. That is really important to me. I've seen this idea where it's like, oh, I have this task list in this calendar and I'm going to have AI just like decide where things go. That is the last thing I want any kind of automated system doing. I want to mindfully decide on how I'm using my work time, my home time, etc. That's just kind of a given. And that's a number one. I recoil at the thought of the idea that AI is going to tell me how to spend my time, my one precious life. Yeah, there we go. I don't want AI writing my emails. I have noticed that Gmail started giving me suggested AI responses to things without me asking it to do that, by the way, which I find a little odd. And I never like the responses. I mean, sometimes they'll respond to a reader, but the answer is just like so generic and so not in my voice. And I just think if that reader took the time to email me in and I can usually tell, I'll get to reading AI generated emails in a second, but I can tell when someone writes me something in their own voice, and I think they deserve a real voice writing back. I'd rather give them no response if I'm too busy to answer emails than a fake canned response written by AI. So you'll never get an AI generated email from me. At the very worst, I may have some templated emails. Like I used to have a template for if someone would write to me and I wasn't able to have them on the show or something, I had like a copy and pasted template that I wrote and that I would edit, but that feels a little bit different. But yeah, I don't want AI becoming my voice, putting words in my mouth and writing my emails. I don't want to read AI-generated emails, and let me tell you, they are coming. I mean, even my son is in robotics, and the robotics teacher is clearly using AI to write emails, and they're like 3 times as long as they need to be with all these bullet points and bolds and short sentences, and oh my God. I know that AI is eventually going to probably learn to sound more like a human, but I still feel like, again, unless you can use it for editing or grammar, but if you have an idea you want to get across, it's very likely that this might be more efficiently done by just drafting it yourself and maybe using AI for a little bit of cleanup rather than writing a very tiny bullet pointy thing and then asking AI to make a flowery kind of speech-like email from it. I get pitches for my podcast that are clearly AI generated. They're like, I listened to this episode and blah, 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 blah. Sometimes they don't follow that template, but you can just tell. And if someone didn't want to take the time to really think about why they are a good fit to come on my podcast and take advantage of my platform, I have no interest in giving them lots of time to respond back. So yeah, I don't want to read AI generated content. I don't want to read an AI generated blog post. I don't want to listen to an AI generated podcast. And I have had the inkling that some podcasts that I listen to and used to like are starting to sound a little bit more like they're reading from a script, and maybe a script that they didn't write. And I'm not super into that. So yeah, to me, so much of the value of podcasts or blog posts or books is like, this came from a person's mind, this creativity, this humanness of it. And I just kind of don't care how good or life-changing it is. I would prefer to read human-generated content. And I'm never going to write AI-generated content. So I proudly pasted some of my blog posts into an AI detector to see if it would think any of it was AI. And it said 0% AI. So that made me incredibly happy. I think if it ever comes to the point where I feel like I need to use AI to do my writing, it's probably time to stop writing. I respect my audience a little too much for that, I think. And I just feel like I'd be hypocritical if I didn't want to read AI, but I felt comfortable writing it. So what do I use it for? I like to use it to find facts across the internet and to compile them in one place. I like to use them for things that are fairly rote or mathematical, like give me a meal plan with this much protein and these many calories, and that's math. It can do a fantastic job with that. I think meal planning in general is kind of a strength of AI, although I love other resources for that as well. You guys know I love Prep Dish and I love Green Chef, and I really do enjoy using these human-created resources. So there's something to be said for both, but I think meal planning can be a strength. I think getting just a brainstorm about any topic, think about all the possible angles of X and just seeing what comes out, because maybe it will come up with perspectives that are on the internet somewhere that I might not have thought of. I think it's really fun for travel planning, especially if you just want to get started. I'm thinking about doing a European trip next summer, and I don't understand very much about the geography of Italy versus Switzerland. So if I ask it to, based on where things are and what other people have done, come up with a sample itinerary going from an Italian city through the Alps to a Swiss city and see what kind of options it comes up with, I think it can be incredibly useful for things like that. Again, I would never use it and then just book everything it says, but it's a really fun starting point for someone like me. I would love to be able to say I use it for my patient notes. We currently have a kind of AI integration that works with our electronic health record, but for me, it has not solved the biggest problem, which is when you are writing notes and seeing patients, there's tons of clicks. And these programs that listen to you will kind of reduce the text burden, but they don't reduce the clicking at all. And then the text is not in your language, and you have to then go and edit it. And I'm waiting for the point where I can see a patient, turn this thing on, and the entire note and billing is done, and that I could just say out loud, order this, 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 and this, and it works. Right now, we are absolutely not there, at least at many institutions. I think some of this has to do with the way healthcare and technology intersect. Some of it has to do with possibly one company controlling a lot of the electronic healthcare space. And I won't get into that, but that's just not there yet, at least where I'm working. I would love to not drive. I am so ready. Once we've gotten to the point where self-driving technology is mainstream, and if we can prove that it's truly safer than humans, which it sounds like a lot of the data is going in that direction, I would absolutely love to not drive. So I'm not a purist who says, I don't want this technology at all. I think that for research and for problem solving, for computation or for drug modeling, I think there are so many wonderful capabilities. And I hope that we can figure out how to harness these technologies to make humans do things better and connect more and make more progress and solve big problems. But in my personal life, I'm just not entirely sure there are that many applications beyond how I'm already using it. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but let's say it did work to empty my email inbox and summarize everything. I feel like all that's going to lead to is 100 times more email. And then to the point where a human couldn't manage their inbox at all if these bots are just kind of replying back and forth to each other. So I guess I would just rather not have that happen. Not that it's my choice anyway. But yeah, that's where I am personally with AI. And that is not meaning at all that I have negative feelings about the guest I had on. I thought she was awesome. I thought she had so many wonderful ideas to offer. But this is just kind of how I'm choosing to think about the technology right now. And I think we need to be excited about some things. I think we need to be really careful about some things. I think there are some things to possibly fear, although my attitude towards really apocalyptic stuff tends to be like, well, if I don't have control over it, I probably just am better off not dwelling on it whatsoever. I mean, I feel that way about certain aspects of climate change. I used to joke that watching Inconvenient Truth ruined a decade for me, and it didn't help anyone for that to ruin my decade. So I just try not to dwell on possible really worst case scenarios. I'd say right now, the sources I use to learn about AI, Cal Newport is a huge one. I love I actually haven't listened as much to his AI specific podcast, although I think I might start to put that on my queue. But when he talks about AI related topics on his regular podcast, Deep Questions, I find it helpful to have his perspective. And I've often enjoyed some of Ezra Klein's guests and personal musings on the topic as well. I'm definitely looking for more, maybe some more female perspectives. Emily provided a few to a listener, so I'll have to check those out. And if you have someone that you feel like has a really balanced and nuanced perspective on all this that you read or listen to, then I would love to hear about that as well. So there we are. I don't know if I'm going to gain listeners, lose listeners with this episode, cause a lot of controversy. Everyone just nods their head. I'm not sure, but I do welcome your thoughts. Next week, we're going to totally pivot and we are going to plan summer together. I know that you guys sometimes like it when I do a kind of like planning while on the mic sort of thing. So I thought that would be a really fun one for next week. But in the meantime, you can let me know your thoughts on this potentially controversial episode. And I have ordered some analog supplies. They are on their way to me, including a planner brand I hadn't heard of, but definitely looks fascinating. So we will have some real planner review type content coming at you in the future as well. I hope you enjoyed listening. I'll be back in your feed next Monday, and I hope everyone has the best possible week available to them. I got that from Pantsuit Politics, but it's a great line. The best week available to you. I'll be back in your feed next Monday.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.